It's great to be in Berlin. It's great to be back at a Polkadot conference. It's been a while. Today I'd like to talk about Zeitgeist and what we're building at Zeitgeist. Particularly I'll focus on Futarchy, but in order to do that, I need to first introduce the project and establish some basis for what this strange word Futarchy means. The slide I just skipped over was my introduction. So basically, I've been in the crypto space since 2015, but really dived in with Ethereum and smart contracts. So for a while, I was writing dApps. I worked on a few different things: decentralized transaction scheduling, a personal tokens platform. In early 2019, I was kind of hitting my head against what I felt was the constraints of the EVM as a developer, and that led me to kind of take a survey of the technologies that were available, and ended up discovering Substrate, and then shortly thereafter joined Web3 Foundation. There I worked on technical education, so built a lot of the Polkadot wiki, but also worked on some tooling around the launch of Kusama and Polkadot. And then last year, left Web3 Foundation to start Zeitgeist. So I'll introduce kind of two parts of the mission statement behind Zeitgeist. And the first one is here. So Zeitgeist is building systems where the truth wins. Concretely, what that means is that we're building a blockchain for prediction markets and Futarchy. So when I say truth, what that means is we're using prediction markets to get a better signal on future events. So we're a permissionless protocol for trading, disputing, and creating prediction markets. Of course, we're built with Substrate. We're deployed to Kusama. I believe we were the 19th parachain to onboard onto Kusama. And we're targeting application verticals that range from more traditional things like sports, esports, politics, to kind of more cutting-edge things like crypto governance. So to give everybody an introduction to prediction markets, what they are an exchange-based market that trade on the outcome of a future event. They're kind of a general construction. Anything that can happen in the future, you can create a prediction market for that. And through the trading mechanism, you get a robust prediction over what might happen. So maybe one of the most interesting parts of prediction markets are that they're able to capture collective intelligence by crowdsourcing it from anyone in the world, right? Anyone who can access the Zeitgeist blockchain. And the reason they can do this and the reason they work is because they provide incentive to people to kind of reveal their knowledge. A subject matter expert in a particular topic for a prediction market, if they see that the market is currently trading at a prediction that they have some knowledge is incorrect, they're able to participate in that market, correct the prediction, which is public information, and they have incentive for doing that because they will later be able to profit from that. So prediction markets have been around for a while. They've been used over the last 20 years. And they've been running companies like Best Buy and even departments of the US government like IARPA. And how they work is that, there's various constructions you can make with prediction markets. Binary, categorical, scalar, and combinatorial. I'll just break down the binary markets because that's the kind of the basic form of a prediction market. So as you might be able to guess from the name, it's a market that trades on two outcomes. It trades on yes, the future event will take place, or no, the future event doesn't take place. So, of course, only one of those can happen. So naturally, the prices of yes and no in that market will be correlated. And the event that actually takes place, so the winning asset, will be later redeemed for one of the base currency, whatever that currency might be, a stable coin, our token, or something different. So while the market is trading, the prices of the outcome assets will change depending on how traders are interacting with the platform. So if yes is at 0.5 of the base asset, that equivalates to 50% probability that that event will take place. So I told you there's two parts of the Zeitgeist mission statement, and the second part is truth is the ally of progress. And this is where we bridge from prediction markets, which is our machine for generating truth, to governance, which is a way to progress an organization. So to touch on some basics of blockchain governance, I know we had the great talk by Dr. Gavin Wood yesterday, introducing governance 2. So this might be a bit of a review, but essentially we have a new institution with blockchains. So they're a decentralized thing that needs to evolve in some way. And while they are able to reduce trust in any centralized party, they still enforce rules that need to be governed in some way. The way these rules change over time need to be governed. So there's some still unanswered questions about blockchain governance. So namely, who is it if we don't have a centralized figure doing it? Who determines the rules? Most of the time, it's the software developers. And some follow-up questions then are, can these rules change if I am part of a blockchain? How do I know that the rules that exist today will exist tomorrow? And if those rules can change, who determines that? So some problems that exist for governance are, so namely, aggregating information is really hard, especially under more traditional voting mechanisms. So the reason this is because in a perfect world, you want everybody who's voting on something to have all the information required for that vote. You want an educated voting base. And that's hard to do, right? That's hard to make sure everybody has access to all of the possible information. Another problem is that there's a lack of incentives to voting. So we see this a lot in current blockchain governance, that most of the votes have very low turnout compared to the number of holders. And there's also risk of polarization in voting systems. So people tend to vote along certain lines, and as they continue to vote along these lines, they kind of double down and become increasingly polarized. And another one is that running data-driven democracy is costly. It's hard to do, and you see this in traditional voting, which hasn't progressed to like truly digital form yet. It's still a lot of it's still manually run, but you also see it in blockchain governance. We create we create these elaborate mechanisms because there's a lot of various considerations that play into it. So it's a costly thing to do. So now I'll get to the star of the presentation here, Futarchy. And Futarchy is what we're proposing as a possible solution to the problems that I just named. So what it is a governance system based on prediction markets and the signals that we get from the prediction market. So we didn't invent it ourselves. So I have to give credit where credit's due. It was invented by a researcher named Robin Hanson in a paper titled "Vote on Values, Bet on Beliefs." And you can get an impression based on that title, roughly where he was coming from, what he was thinking about when he came up with this. And essentially, it's the insight there is that we want to separate what people want, which is what they're doing when they're voting. They're expressing what they want, and separate that from the plan for how we achieve those wants. And why are we doing this crazy experimental new thing? It's because we think democracy is good. Of course, we've progressed a long way through history here, but it does suffer from what we see as some information and coordination failures, especially as it scales out. So I'll give you an example of Futarchy in practice. So this example comes from a blog post from one of the researchers at Zeitgeist. And it's in context of our own chain. So the first thing you do when you create a Futarchy market is you choose a metric that you'll judge that proposal on. So for the Zeitgeist chain, since we're a chain of prediction markets, a good metric for us might be which measure of a series of different measures will increase the 7-day trading volume by at least 20% in the next 60 days. So when you choose a metric, the more detailed you are and the more accurate you are about the constraints, the better, because you're narrowing down the possible noise that might exist. Like if we didn't specify in the next 60 days, for instance, there's no traders wouldn't have the clarity of the time limit. So step 2, after choosing a metric, is you actually create that market. So with Zeitgeist, you will deploy a new market, and it'll be open to trading. So when you deploy a market, it might start out that each of these measures, let's call them Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, have equal predictions of increasing this metric. So 33, 33, 33. But as traders look at these measures, they'll change that prediction for each one up and down. So we wait for the market life cycle to conclude, and we see what the crowdsourced prediction tells us. So let's say it shows us that Plan A has 80% probability of increasing this metric. The next step is then to apply that change. So depending on what Plan A was about, it could be a runtime upgrade to our chain, or it could be adding a new feature to our app. We apply that change and then see what happens over the next 60 days. The final step would then be auditing that metric and seeing what actually happened and rewarding those people who gave us good information during the market. So people have used Futarchy in the past. I named a couple big companies a few slides ago. But Zeitgeist wants to bring the Futarchy experience further than we've seen before. We want to deploy it into a truly public space, like a blockchain, where there's permissionless participation, and we want to see how it performs. So we're incorporating Futarchy as a core governance process of our parachain. So we are using kind of the standard substrate democracy palette and council palette, but alongside those governance processes, we'll deploy these Futarchy markets that will help us make decisions about how we progress the protocol. So some examples of metrics that we might use include like transaction volume, as I mentioned before, trading volume. So we're still figuring out exactly which metrics we think will be most beneficial to judge. And it might be, or will probably be, a combination of these. But essentially, we want to increase the usage of Zeitgeist and increase the approachability. So if we want to increase the transaction throughput, we'll judge that metric. If we want more traders on the Zeitgeist platform, we'll do the trade volume metric, et cetera. And we also want to cooperate with the community, with the ecosystem. So we want to provide Futarchy to the greater Polkadot ecosystem. And we can do this using XCM. So once Zeitgeist proves out Futarchy on its own parachain, we can allow other parachains to opt into that if they so choose, and become something like a Futarchy provider of the ecosystem. Eventually, we could even incorporate this back into the core Polkadot governance. So one example of how we could do this would be through Treasury Expense. So Treasury Expense are when someone proposes to do something to the on-chain governance, and they get paid some money to go off and do that thing. So running a Futarchy market would allow us to have a indication of the success probability of funding this treasury proposal and how much value this proposal would add to the ecosystem. And there's more examples that we can do like that, but that's one illustrative example. And that concludes my talk. So thank you, everyone. And if you are interested by what I talked about, you can talk to me or reach out to us on one of our socials.
Thank you, Logan. So, can you comment on why prediction markets aren't just self-fulfilling prophecies?
Aren't just self-fulfilling prophecies. So I think it comes back to the fact that they provide incentive to correct an incorrect market. So if there is a market that's currently showing a certain thing as winning, but someone else has some knowledge that they know that thing is very unlikely to win, they can come in and correct that. So in a way, it's you do want the market to be correct, but it's not a self-fulfilling thing because people will go in and correct that market.
Great. The Akala app for Ledger, when will it be available?
The Akala app? Dan.
Dan Reister. Soon.
Okay.
Great. Predictions. Would that just be for crypto values and rates, or would include other fields as well, like success or failure of certain projects or political matters or different current affairs?
Yes. Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, we're focusing on a range of applications. So politics is definitely one. Things like local politics could have markets on them. Of course, like bigger elections will have markets on them. And there's a whole long tail of applications as well. Almost anything you can create a prediction market on.
Exciting. Are there any prediction markets that aren't on Zeitgeist yet that you would like to see?
Yeah, well, so we still have yet to launch the app properly. We did run a beta, which we saw a lot of interesting markets come up in. But yeah, there are a lot of markets I'd like to see once we launch.
Amazing. And those are your questions.
All right.
Thank you
Great.
so much.